Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bacon and Coffee. Wait, no, it's that side. There we go. And we're going to get started here. I'm going to do my 30-second countdown. We're going to do our intro tunes, and then I will introduce our guests to you. Here we go. All right, everybody, and here we go with our theme song, and we'll get going. Woo! I love the boom at the end. You know, it's like...
You too.
Yeah, thank you. So welcome, everybody. This is Marla Tabaka. She is an amazing person. Let's just start there. You're amazing. I've known you for what, 5-10 years? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say closer to 10 than 5, Frank.
Right, exactly. Yes, easily.
You know what? I don't even remember how we met.
I don't remember either, but I do remember going to coffee shops and sitting down and having conversations with you at the Starbucks down on 75th. So
yeah.
that's how all this stuff started.
Yeah. And it's been a journey.
It has been a journey. So speaking of journey, so I want people to kind of get to know you, and we're going to be talking about mindset matters today, because I think I've been going down a journey of mindset. And I've been, recently kind of learning a bunch of things, not only from you, but from, different audiobooks and things. And I've got some stuff in my head that I need to clear out, some cobwebs and things. So, and I think everybody else can enjoy this too. So if you have any comments, put them in the comment window and we'll try to answer them. I can't look at everything. I can't look at Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, that's the best place to put them. But we're also live on YouTube. And so Marla, you started out as a producer at NBC5. You worked for the NBC affiliate. How the heck did you get into that? Why did you get into producing TV?
Well, I think that working at NBC is a demonstration of my whole basis of my life and business now around mindset and manifestation and creating the destiny in the world that you want to live in. When I was a little girl, my brother-in-law, Tom, was an overnight security guard at NBC in Chicago. Yeah, at the Merchandise Mart. It was still in the Merchandise Mart at the time. And he used to take me up there as wee little, and I would play in the props, and, the stage hands were all really sweet about taking me, giving me the tour of the warehouse overnight as they were setting up the different sets and everything. And I would sleep on the sofa in the lobby near Tom. And Brian, I just knew that that's where I was going to grow up, that was what was going to be my home as a young adult, and forever and ever and ever. I just knew it, had no doubt. And sure enough, when I was like 20, Tom called me and said, there's a receptionist position open. I want you to interview for it. It's temporary for the summer. So I did, and I got the job, and we loved each other so much, the company and I, that they dismissed the poor woman who was the receptionist, and kept me. And I spent 22 years there. And it was just the most amazing career a person could ask for. And it was a dream career. It really was.
Yeah, so you worked with and you got to know a lot of the personalities in the news team and stuff like that. I mean, you were a multimedia producer. What did that mean back then? Because to me, multimedia is, back when you were probably doing it, we didn't have all of the cool tools that we have now.
Well, exactly. But that was the time. Oh, gosh, we're really dating ourselves here. But what the heck? That was the time that the internet the World Wide Web was invented. And I had such a fascination for it that I bought a Mac computer.
Okay.
Up in my bedroom, and I would sit at home and I learned HTML because that's how you built websites back then. And I created the first website for any media outlet in the city of Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah, and we even had we sponsored the Bull, so we even had Benny the Bull as a little animated GIF, hopping across the street. And so that job is one of two jobs that followed me throughout my career at NBC. But I also produced sales tapes and won a national Emmy for one of our community service projects. And, I did a lot of production work at NBC. And so, yes, online marketing materials, marketing videos, and but I also worked in many other departments as I worked my way up in the company, and that ended me in the executive branch there.
Nice. So what was the thing that the impetus that you said, okay, I'm done, and you wanted to start your own business?
So, the field changed. It just, when they started having me do the promos that were very much, as they were called, teases, news teases. Well, they got to the point where they were being teased to things that were rather sensational. And I was very uncomfortable with that. And I just started to become unhappy. We got a new news director, and it just wasn't great for me anymore. And so I started to get excited about exploring something else. And I spoke to our station manager, who was Larry Wirt at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He Larry and I, he was awesome. My office is right across the hall from his. And spoke to him, and he said, Marla, you take all your time, stay with the company as long as you'd like until you figure out what you want to do when you grow up. Because I was still relatively young. And because I started so young. And so I did. I stayed for 6 months, and then I still couldn't figure it out. So I just left because I felt guilty. I really wasn't working very much. And so I went into this little local coffee house with the guy I was dating at the time and fell in love with it, and went up to the owner and said, I want to buy your place. And she said, okay.
Really? It was that simple? Or you just bought a cup of coffee and said, I want to buy the place?
Yeah, it was that simple. So I bought the coffee house, and that was an amazing journey. And the fact being, we were actually known all over the world because of our music stage. And we had people coming from many different countries to perform. They did coffee house tours back then. I don't know if they still do, musicians and artists. And so we had people from all over the world. It was amazing.
So did you pay the musicians? I mean, was that part of the deal, or was it just
paid them very little, basically gas money, but until we got really big and we started drawing a large crowd, then we charged a fee at the door, and that got split.
Gotcha.
With the bands. Yeah. It still wasn't a lot of money, maybe $800 or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember playing, because when my band started out, we were doing, coffee shops and things of that nature. We were making $50, play for an hour and a half, which wasn't bad, but, we got a cup of coffee and $50.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. But, a lot of bands, like one band actually made it pretty big because they were so good. I think it's called the Metro Theater.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I got them on stage at the Metro, and I rented a couple school buses and took a bunch of their fans into Chicago, and hung out at the Metro. They did really well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So you went from multimedia to news producing, and I think one of the things that when you were doing the news stories, I remember the old song by Tom Henley, or Don Henley, excuse me. And it was, oh boy, I can't remember the name of the tune. You might remember. But anyway, somebody will remember it and they'll put it in. But it was like the old saying of, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing, And that was I remember the sensationalism in the 90s and stuff like that,
It just got so old so fast. And it was just time. I followed my intuition, and it was time. And, while I was at NBC, I remember, again, going back to that manifesting the life you desire thing. I remember going down to to a little newspaper stand, and I picked up this magazine I'd never heard of called Inc. magazine. And it was all about being an entrepreneur. And, back then I thought of business as IBM and, companies.
Right.
I didn't even know the world of small business. And I fell in love with this magazine, even though I knew nothing about being an entrepreneur, just fell in love. And so I bought it. I kept it out in my home. And I thought, I want to write for this magazine someday, even though I knew nothing. And so when I began coaching, kind of fast forward, I started writing for a friend's blog. One of the first blogs with multi-channels on the internet. And Inc. found me and asked me to come write for them. I didn't even seek it out. So it's pretty amazing.
How did they find you?
Because they found me on the blog. They were doing a search for authors in small business. And that's what I was writing about, mindset in small business.
Wow.
And I was shocked that they wanted me to write, because most of my writings were about having thought management, basically, and controlling those thoughts in your mind that stop you from doing the things that you want, stop you from believing in yourself. And they said, yeah, well, that's what drew us to you, because we don't have anybody that talks about that kind of thing. Well, now doesn't everybody?
Yes.
But it was fun, and it was really amazing to be an original, if you will. Yeah. Yeah, there's one.
That's one of your articles right there. So how long have you been writing for Inc.? How many years did you do that?
Brian, it's been like since 2008.
Wow.
Yeah. I have thousands of articles out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how, okay, so now we had the transition from, NBC to the Fat Bean, and then what happened with the Fat Bean, and then all of a sudden you decided to become a business coach, and we'll talk about that after we talk about the transition.
Again, just another stroke of luck or fate, whatever you would say. I was struggling with running a business of that size, the coffee house, and we had 15 employees. I needed to drive through in the conference room. It was a big scale business, and I'd never done anything like that. And so I was confiding in one of my customers, and he said, Marla, have you ever heard of a business coach? I'm like, say what? A what? Huh? This was like in 2002. No. And he goes, let me introduce you to somebody. So he introduced me to Steve, who became my business coach. And I remember I was so afraid, because it was a lot of money, and money wasn't rolling in yet. And I was so afraid of signing on the dotted line. But Brian, as soon as I did, it was like this, I'm not in this alone anymore. And it felt so flipping good. And Steve and I worked together for almost 2 years. And then I just fell in love with what he did. Only he was a psychologist turned coach, and he couldn't cross that that line. He was very careful about crossing the line between business to thought management. And I missed that. I wanted that. And so I said, Steve, do coaches do this? And he said, well, not many. And I said, I want to. And he said, you'd be amazing. And so he mentored me through school. He started while I still had the Fat Bean, and he became my mentor coach for training. And I sold the Fat Bean and hung my shingle as a coach after training, and it just immediately took off. I was very blessed, because it's not common. Coaches tend to struggle. And I'm not, I went through my years of struggle. Absolutely. I did this at a time when my twin daughters were only 13, 14 years old. And as a single mom, my husband had passed away. So it was scary, but I saw a question online today on Facebook where another coach or a person asked, it wasn't a coach, person asked, what was your dream job as a child, and how close have you come to achieving your dream career? And I remember as a kid, I was so intrigued with the power of the mind. And this is goofy, but I was way tiny. I was maybe kindergarten, and my dad worked in a factory, and he used to bring home these styrofoam, no, not styrofoam, but spongy, blocks that were left over from something they created, and they were all different colors. He brought home 2, 3 big shopping bags of them, and I would dump them on the floor, and I would sit there and stare at one and try and move it with my mind. So I believed in the power of the mind since I was a wee little girl.
So were you able to bend spoons at the coffee shop?
At the coffee shop? No.
Yeah. Did you hold one up and bend, what I say with your mind? Could you bend a spoon?
Well, can I show you something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stage left for a minute or stage right, actually?
Absolutely. So I'll wait till you come back. There you are. Okay. So, all right, go ahead.
Here
Oh
are
my, those are all your bent spoons? Wow.
yeah.
And you did that by holding it up.
No, I mean, okay, so this is a really heavy gauge, as you can tell, really
Right.
heavy
Yes. Yeah.
spoon, and
Hmm.
I've twisted it. So you try and do that without putting any thought to it, and guys especially, they'll come and say, "Well, I can do that." I mean, look at that circle twist, right? I
That's
can,
amazing.
and then they can't. But when you engage the mind and you believe that anything is possible, and you sit here and say, yeah, nothing's going to stop me. And this is an amazing lesson for entrepreneurs. Nothing needs to stop me. And you get that focus in on it, and you get yourself all charged up. It's like, ta-da!
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I've never seen that.
yeah.
Well, at least from you. I mean, I've seen it, but I've never seen you bring out your spoons. So okay, so let's kind of pull back now. So now you're in the coaching mode, and by the way, love the mug, because it is bacon and coffee, right? And okay, so us as entrepreneurs, and going back to what you said before, I mean, when I was in running my businesses, and I worked for AT&T, I remember getting Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Success Magazine, PC Mag. I was just a magazine junkie. I would constantly buy all these things because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And, but I never quite got the gist of what they were trying to say. I never understood the big picture because they usually promote, somebody that was like in a business that was big. And, I was looking at a business that, at the time, I never even realized how big my business was in the 90s. I mean, I did probably $500,000 worth of business, but never really thought about it, I mean, because I had 5 employees and I had rent to pay. And it was just like, I felt like I was funneling money. I didn't feel like, hey, I'm successful. And I didn't have any coaches. I didn't know coaches existed back then. You didn't hear about that. You didn't see it. And now today, there's a whole business around coaching.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about it is, and you and me are both part of a group on Facebook. There are 25,000 business coaches in there.
Right.
And some of them are very niche specific, and some of them are, big. And then you have the franchises, you have the business coaches that are part of, the Brian Tracy groups and, all those kind of things. And so my question to you is, why can't we just go to a Tony Robbins, big rally and come out successful? Or why can't we just watch the movie The Secret and be successful? These are all the mindset tricks that everybody talks about. It's like, all you have to do is achieve it and believe it, and you too can be, mega successful and all those kind of things. But it's not that easy. And I've learned that the hard way, obviously, because I've gone through a lot of coaches until I started working with you.
Yeah.
And
yeah. One of my pet peeves is when a very successful entrepreneur, Sarah Blakely Spanks, for instance, writes a blog or talks about anybody can do this. You can do this. You just have to have the right mindset. You can do it. Anybody can do this. Brian, that's absolutely not true. An entrepreneur's mindset and brain is very different than that of a, I don't know, regular person, whatever you would like to say.
Somebody in a 9-to-5 job. I mean, it's a different world, because you at 9 to 5, you're basically following somebody else's plan and sequence, and everything. You walk in and they have set things that you need to do, and you get achievement reports and all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. So first, that's not true. So for people to believe, what that creates is this cycle of failure and loss of self-esteem and self-worth, because entrepreneurs are out there believing from people who have done it that anyone can do it. Why can't they? So that's one thing. But going to a Tony Robbins or any conference whatsoever, the typical response to a conference is you go, you get all psyched up. You might even get an accountability buddy or something who you meet at the conference. And then 3 months at the outside, typically it's 2 or 3 weeks, you're back to your old space. So it's muscle memory, basically. Our brain is in the habit of doing certain things, and you don't just change that overnight. And working with, for instance, a Brian Tracy coach or a Tony Robbins coach, that can be great for some people. I'm not dissing programs like that, but they are out of the box. They are box programs, basically, a program that comes out of a box. They train the coach how to do very specific things only, and they have a program that they're taught to stick to. So while if you are struggling with sales and all you need to do is figure out how to generate sales, then a sales coach might be a good thing for you. If you don't have a mindset around sales that says, oh, salespeople are sleazy, or I'll never pick up the phone and make a cold is appropriate for sales, and you get a sales coach, you might succeed. So an individual coach like myself, or someone who has a small coaching practice, you might have a couple of other coaches in there, take a whole different approach. And it's definitely a body, mind, and spirit, not to be woo-woo, because I'm not a woo-woo person, but I do believe in manifesting your desires through the power of the mind and things like that, but it's based on science. So it's just a very different coaching category, shall we say. And conferences are great, but they don't produce long-term results.
Right.
Rarely.
Well, and one of the things I've learned over the course of the years in being in business is, there's a couple of core concepts. Number one, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right.
Number two, every doctor needs a doctor. Every mentor needs a mentor. Every coach needs a coach. And because you can't see the forest from the trees, you cannot see what's going on in your world. You can't see what's blocking you and stopping you. And, the mindset tricks that we play on ourselves to think that we're being productive when actually we're being counterproductive. Right. And I think that's one of the things, is getting that perspective. The second thing that I think is uber important in this case is the fact that if you're going to find a coach, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, you want to find somebody who's been there, done that.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. I don't have a $10 million business.
Right.
But I've helped many, many, many people build $10 million business.
But one of the things that you did do is you did do the coffee shop. So you've been through, the struggles that people go through, and then you hired a coach and had the experience of actually going through that.
Yes. And I worked in middle market too. I developed a new division for a mid-sized company that worked with, like, if you remember, Claire's boutiques.
Oh, yes, very much.
Stores and things like that. So I have worked with Fortune 500 companies on a contract basis and things like that. So yes, from that regard, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean. It's not like you have to have a $10 million company not to understand it. And the thing is that you've worked for a major corporation, a very large news corporation. So you saw the struggles of management. You saw all that stuff firsthand. I mean, I learned the same kind of thing when I worked at AT&T. AT&T had, I remember, and this again, I was a rebel. I've always been a rebel, and AT&T, I could kind of play in that sandbox. Arthur Andersen, I could not play in that sandbox. It was a different, I thought, okay, I worked at AT&T, I can handle this. Arthur Andersen was a completely different world, and I blew that one bad. But the thing about AT&T is I remember walking around there, and it was like my first experience with women, like vice presidents and things like that. It's like I never saw that. My dad was always the breadwinner. My mom stayed home, and it's like, and it was like when I met these people, I got to know them personally, not very deeply, but it's like I remember her name was Beth Eddy, and I'd walk up and I'd say, "Hey Beth, how you doing? What's happening?" That kind of thing. "Hey Brian, how are you?" I was always the guy pushing around the carts and setting up for meetings, and I was in media and stuff like that. So I did that even as a kid in high school. I was a guy pushing carts around, setting up film strips, and so I was very comfortable in that role. And I remember my boss coming to me and saying, "You can't do that." "I can't do what?" "You can't call her Beth. You have to call her Miss Eddy." And I'm going, wow. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, dude, no, and that was just my way of doing things. It was like, I could deal with that. But when in Arthur Andersen, it was, you couldn't get away with that stuff,
No, that's one of the reasons I love the media. When I worked at NBC, is when I started there, we had 1,200 employees, and they were seeing massive layoffs, so we went down to 850, and eventually even less than that. But I'll tell you, we were a family. We were very close.
Mm-hmm.
Knew everybody, and we were all first name basis, no matter what title you held, who you were, and there was so much fun, just fun at work. We had fun, unless there was a news crisis or something.
Yeah, right.
But we had fun, and it was amazing in the newsroom, because in the heat of a crisis, and we're getting out to cover plane crashes and things like that. People would swear and yell at each other and call each other horrible names, But then after everything settled, the dust settled, you forgot that. You don't remember it. And there were never people, it never caused a rift in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just expected, because you're about to tell somebody that their son or daughter died on an airplane.
Yeah.
And it was expected. Emotions ran hot, but it was a wonderful group of people.
Yep. I remember, some of that because I was in the media production, and it was like, when it was the Mother's Day fire in Hinsdale, when all the phones shut down, and we were out there, and that was my taste of news. That was kind of, I was doing video production for AT&T at the time, and we were covering it, and the news cameras were there. And it's like, hey, we're news too. It's like,
Yeah.
It was interesting, but it was, I remember that too, because tensions were high. You couldn't talk to people, but you still wanted to ask them the questions, and it's like.
Right, exactly. One of my most traumatic memories from NBC was actually when I was a receptionist, not when I worked in the newsroom, and we were, putting up information about a plane crash at O'Hare, but we didn't have the flight number yet.
Mm-hmm.
And man called and said, "Do you know the flight number yet? Do you know the flight number yet?" And they just flashed it on the screen. And so I said it was, I don't know, for some reason I want to say 13 something. And his voice just started to break. And he said, "My daughter and grandson were on that flight." And so I had told this man basically that he'd lost his daughter and grandson. And I'm still getting emotional. So the phones were ringing like crazy, but I stayed on the phone with that man for, almost 10 minutes. Just listening to him. And so the industry has its difficulties, right? But it was also very joyful. Yeah.
Okay, so back to the mindset thing. One of the things that, again, I kind of want to dig into this, because a lot of people have strategies. They're, like you said, you go to I'm not dissing a Brian Tracy thing. There are times where that works,
Right.
But the one thing is that you've got a playbook, and it's like, it's almost, I look at that kind of coaching, and again, I don't want to diss it, but it is like when you call up Apple support, and they say, okay, well, have you rebooted your phone? Okay, go to this screen. They basically have a script. They have a set sequence of things that they do.
Right.
And, they're dealing with whatever issue it is. If you have the sales issue, it's this one. If you have the HR issue, it's this one. If you have the marketing issue, it's this one. And they have this playbook of things that you should be doing. And, in a big picture world, it's going to help most people, right? But I think one of the biggest differences in the mindset side of things and what you do, and what I find very effective coaches doing, is really understand the deep-rooted things that are in people's minds and how to manage relationships and people. I think that's what coaching really, when you get deep down to it, is how do you relate to people? How do you react to people? How do you react to yourself, your own things?
Yes. And I was just, that was going to be my response exactly. What has to come first is how you react to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The voice inside your head. We all have a voice inside of our head. What does it tell you on a daily basis? And one of the things I love most as a challenge is when an entrepreneur comes to me and they have that director type personality. They like lists, they like bullet points, they like to be in control. And they argue with me that, no, I don't want to work on me. I need to work on my business. And so often what I'll say to them is, well, how's that working for you? And how in business are you where you want to be? Yeah, well, no. So entrepreneurs, to work with me, first have to embrace the fact that we're going to be working on you and your mindset and thought management, and really explore what you believe about yourself, as well as the paradigm in which you live. What do you believe about the world? Because we all have what's called unconscious bias, right? We grew up knowing something is true, and we don't leave room for alternative facts, stories, or possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know it. The thing is, it's subconscious. We don't know that we're seeing these things this way. So working on the person has to come first. And Brett, I have countless stories. I mean, just countless stories of how entrepreneurs come in to work with me and they resist working on them because the business is paying for this. We have to work on the business, but they don't get away with that. And when we work on them, all of a sudden, I mean, in one case, the entrepreneur went from a 6-figure business to a $40 million business in
Wow.
6 months.
In 6 months?
6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. She came in with a very scalable business model. And this is what I love. This is so fun. She wasn't scaling. And she thought that she just didn't have what it took. And she had some really odd preconceived beliefs about herself and the world and her industry. And when we were able to challenge those beliefs and get her believing in herself and some other things, and talk about how to scale the business. Basically, she could do government contracts, but she was only serving one part of the government.
One niche.
Yeah. And she could scale it by getting other government contracts in other divisions, but she hadn't done it. And so we talked about that, how to do it, blah, blah, blah. And she scaled like that. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. And I assume these are not your standard results, right? Not everybody who does a business coach goes from, Yeah,
no, but I talked to one of my clients this morning who's referring me to one of his clients, and he said, you have permission to tell her that I am making 4 times what I made when I started with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, typically I'd say 80% of my clients see results that make them very, very happy.
Yeah.
And, the ones that don't either have life circumstances that prevent their growth or don't want to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
But they still see results. Everybody sees results that make them happy, but
right.
Ecstatically happy or happy.
Right. But I think that there's a certain thing there that, I know that you and I do the same thing. And you've taught me this, is that you basically interview the people to make sure that they are going to be successful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I won't take anyone on who I don't believe in. And I won't work with someone who has a business model that I don't believe in. And that happens. I had somebody call me the other day saying they are breaking into grocery tech. And we talked a little bit about her idea and whatnot. And I know from my experience with working with Kevin Harrington for a number of years, he was one of the original Sharks on Shark Tank, and we worked with inventors and did a radio show together. I know how hard it is to break into an industry with an invention or an idea. And she just didn't have the connection she needed. And I was like, it's going to take years. I can't in good consciousness take your money, knowing that, it's going to take years if, and it was a big if.
Yep.
Never even break into the industry. But I gave her some good advice, and hopefully at least she was happy with that.
That's good. Yeah. And I think that's really key is that you understand you can actually see the opportunity before you walk into it. Yes. And that's one of the things that I think is really super important. Again, having somebody who's been there, done that. I don't mean it from, they have to have a $4 million business, but somebody who at least understands the people side of it, why people get in their own way. And I have a story that I'll tell, for the people that are here, and I want to say hi to Phil and anybody else who's shown up because Phil said hi. But one of the stories is that when I was a little kid, my dad pulled the truck into our house, and it happened to have 3 gas tanks in it and had 92 gallons worth of gas. And we had a gas space heater at the time. So the gas heated up, overflowed out of the truck onto the floor, caught the space heater on fire, and the entire garage started burning. And I remember driving in my car going, I'm going down the street and I say, wow, there's smoke. And I said, whoa, there's fire trucks. And I go, holy crap, it's my house. And, so luckily nothing was terrible. I think I was 16 at the time. It did burn the garage and melted the wallpaper off the kitchen, but, and there was smoke damage all over the place, but it wasn't, it didn't burn the whole house down. So luckily they were able to put it out fast enough and they basically pulled the truck out, which turned into this flaming, it was crazy. But then I walked downstairs with my dad, a couple of months after we got back in the house, and he's sitting there cleaning this lamp with a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol. And, it was an old lamp that we've had forever. I remember it from my childhood. And I just looked at him. I said, Dad, why are you going through all this? Why don't you just buy a new one? And he turned around and yelled at me. He said, do you think we're made out of money? It's like, all of a sudden it was like, I just got, and from that time forward, I had this aversion towards money.
Right.
And I didn't even realize that's what the cause was.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens, a little bit of neuroscience here, if I may, because I'm
sure. Well, that's the point. That's why I brought the story up, so you can kind of explain it,
Yeah. What happens when we have a traumatic event occur in our life, or any kind of event, but we're looking at trauma, which that for you was trauma. You stepped back in that moment, you went, you downloaded all, a bunch of adrenaline and other things that affected your neural system.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is it creates an imprint by creating a string of neurotransmitters, okay? And these neurotransmitters create, like, we can compare it to an old-fashioned vinyl record with a groove in it. It imprints itself in our brain. And so what happens in a nanosecond moving forward is anytime you're confronted with something that would remind you of that incident subconsciously, it's not a conscious reaction, right? You said, I didn't even know what caused that. I have an aversion to money belief, right? Is that neurotransmitter just the neural pathway just shoots off and brings back, just in a fast wave, and this happens so fast, brings back all the emotions, all the fears, all the body that response, and you don't know what is even happening to yourself. And eventually that just becomes so ingrained, such an ingrained pattern that and I was talking about unconscious bias, we create that unconscious bias and that belief system that is so deep that will absolutely keep you from doing certain things. So you probably were pushing away success because it meant money, and that meant a certain thing to you.
What do you mean probably?
I'm not going to sit here and diagnose, but my guess is, yeah. And so that's what happened for you. And then you learned that where that money story came from. Mm-hmm. Why do I have this aversion to money? Why do I push success and money away? Why? And your dad taught you something else that's very important in that moment. He devalued your opinion. And so he taught you that your opinion doesn't matter.
Right.
Right. And so you take all these things on and they can destroy a future, literally, especially when they're compounded. I mean, your dad was a wonderful guy. I know that from
yes, he was. Yeah.
But for some people, those kinds of stories are compounded by parenting. And so you grow up with this constant belief hammered into your brain that you can't, you won't, you're not worth it. So on and so on. So what I do is I help people change that programming inside of their brains into basically eradicate it. Mm-hmm. And then we basically we're implanting a new belief system, a more empowering one. And then we work on getting that to be creating the stream of consciousness in terms of what you believe about yourself and the world around you.
Right. And back to what I said before, I think a lot of it has to do with relational things that we have, and that's it. So, not only is there the accountability side of things where you're coming in and seeing things from a different perspective. And it's not like you walk in and say, hey, I know you have a problem with money. Boom, boom, boom. It takes time to get to that place.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it does. But it's more about how you relate with other people, how you engage with your employees, how you engage with your customers. I mean, isn't that the biggest piece of what you do, or am I missing something?
So the biggest piece again is how we relate with ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Believe in ourselves. That can cause us to relate with other people in a way that isn't productive or meaningful. I've worked with many people who have never really gotten as close to their spouse as they could, because they keep secrets about themselves and they keep secrets about other things. I have clients who keep secrets from their spouse about the business and any number of things. But then once you learn to believe in yourself and once you gain this new perspective, then your relationships can change. And then there's the flip side of that in learning how to communicate
Mm-hmm.
with different personality and communication styles and learning styles. If you're a very social person, you like
Mm-hmm.
the Saturday morning coffee thing. Me too. I'm the same way. But you get somebody who has that director type personality, that driven type A personality,
Right.
and they're not going to want to be as chitty chatty as we're being right now, right? They're going to bullet point life. And so when you go into a coworker, a boss, a business partner, a client or a prospect, really importantly, and you and I would sit there and chat them up, and they're of that different personality, or they're a very analytical personality, they're going to be rolling their eyes. You're going to see the veins start popping, and you're going to get the sale, right? You have to have the gift to be able to assess somebody through an email, through prior communication, on the phone, or within seconds of meeting them. Really
Right.
figure that out really fast. So I help people learn how to do that.
Yep. And I do a little bit too, but I use a tool called Crystal where I can actually go and do a personality profile on the people before I meet them. and I've learned how to do that, which makes it easier to understand how to communicate with them. If they're a D, man, get to the point, tell them the bonuses, what's in it for them and that kind of stuff. And then the skeptics are the ones that, you have to spend more time with and, go through the stories and the steps and,
proof. Give me evidence. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So Phil has a very interesting question, and I think you can answer this one pretty easy. He says, have you guys ever encountered an age where it becomes impossible to change a mindset? Old dog, new tricks.
Oh, goodness, no. No. I once worked with a woman who was almost 70. Well, I worked with all right, I'm going to change stories because this one is far more powerful.
Okay, go for it.
I worked with a woman who was in her 80s, and this was a while ago. In World War II, she was a young girl, and her father, unfortunately, did unspeakable things to her, and the story is just so deep and so intense. She was never able to tell her own children how much she loved them. She was never able to tell her grandchildren or grandchildren how much she loved them. She was never able to tell stories about herself and her own life. She was traumatized. So she went through life basically just doing the things she had to do, but never feeling. So we had some sessions together with performed a modality that I use in my practice quite often, and called EFT, or tapping, emotional freedom techniques. And we worked through this story, and I was the first person in her entire life who she'd ever told these stories to, and they were, like I said, unspeakable. She changed as a person, like remarkably so. Her son, who's a senior citizen himself by this time, it told me how much she changed and thanked me and told me some stories about what was happening in her life now. And she got to spend her final year of her life telling everyone in her life how much she loved and appreciated them, and how much and what specifically she loved about them. And they got to know the real her before she passed away a year later. It's really meaningful change.
So what's the difference between, going and seeing a psychologist or a therapist and business coaching? Because I think that's something that, there's kind of overlap, but there's not.
Yeah. So first, let me say that not all business coaches are also life coaches. I'm a life coach and a business coach. So you wouldn't expect to go to a straight up business coach and gain this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the difference is life coaches are empowerment based. We tend to work with people who have already done their therapy perhaps, or successfully or not, but they've done a lot of work on themselves, and now they're serious. They're ready to create the life or business of their dreams, and they're ready to be happy. They're ready to give up the stories, the old voices in the head that say we can't or won't or whatever. They're ready. And so it's empowerment based. We don't spend time in your past like you might in therapy. We spend just enough time there to figure out what stories, what events may have shaped who you've become.
Mm-hmm.
Then we work on moving forward and eradicating the effects of those stories, and then building the future. So, and I will say there are many therapists today who do empowerment therapy, who don't spend a lot of time in the past, but spend the time in the present and in the future, and empowering their clients with tools to release the negativity and have a more positive mindset. So there are some therapists, but a lot of therapists are becoming coaches now. In fact, I just took on a client who is a psychotherapist, and she's decided she wants to become a coach because there are so many boundaries in therapy work. And there are some boundaries in coaching, but they're ethical boundaries. And so you're not going to lose your license, so it's pretty cool. So I hope that answers your question. And Phil, I hope we answered your question too.
Yeah, I think you did. And he said, damn, Marla, I didn't ask you to make me cry. So, so I think you answered his question. So when we talk about business, so to speak, and when people come to you or people are looking to change their businesses, how does somebody come to the point where they say, I think I can do better and I need help? I mean, what are the trigger points that get people to do this? Because for me, it's always been, I got a little taste of something and I knew I did better. And it's like, I kept looking for somebody who could come in and actually take it to the next level. But I kept running into people that would say, here's the bright, shiny object, do this. Here's the bright, shiny object, do that. And this is much more of a holistic thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me in my practice, and people reading my ink columns and my website, basically I market to people who have tried and tried and tried and not getting to where they want to be. And so they're overwhelmed. They're, as you said, chasing the bright and shiny object.
Mm-hmm.
They're being torn in so many different directions. They don't have time to work on the business, and it's driving them crazy because honestly, most smart entrepreneurs know how to grow their business. They're just not doing it. And so they get tired of the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really, really lonely. Like I felt at the coffee house. It's really lonely because even your spouse doesn't understand necessarily what you go through on a daily basis. And so to bring somebody into the picture who gets it, who's been there not just themselves, but 1,000 times over with clients, that's very empowering. So most of the prospects that come to me now are just saying, look, I've been trying on my own and I'm not getting far. It's not working. So there's something missing, or I'm doing something wrong, or I'm overwhelmed and I'm unhappy. I don't spend time with my family. So they're suffering enough. Now, with that said, finally, coaching is becoming more popular and is more mainstream than it was when I started. So I am beginning to even get people who haven't, who've just launched their businesses. It used to be 3 to 5 years
Mm-hmm.
business, and now I've got people who are just launching, and they're smart enough to know I can save myself a lot of money, a lot of grief and stress, and a lot of mistakes if I work with somebody right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing is I think that in order for, well, it's the same thing that I do. I mean, everything I do in marketing is based on investment ROI. When you sit down and look at it, is I always say that every dollar that you spend, you should make 3, one for the service, one for yourself, and then one for profit. And, a lot of times it's 1 to 10.
Yeah.
So give an example of how business coaching, helps people realize that ROI, that profit. What are some of the practical things that happen?
Yeah. So probably what I see most often is the entrepreneurs trying to do everything themselves. And so they have this mindset that is dictating the decisions they make. I can't afford an assistant. I can't afford an XYZ person. I can't afford marketing, Well, the fact is, if you calculate how much money you've left on the table because you're busy paying the bills or doing the books or what have you, writing your own content and things like that that are outsourceable, then you're never going to make it. And so I have a little formula that I share with people that makes it possible for them to bring on help. And as soon as they can start letting go and letting other people do the things they shouldn't be doing, you start to see some success. And of course, the mindset piece is really, really big. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs who they don't have clarity. They know they can grow the business, but they're not quite sure how, and they're going in too many directions. So we bring that all together. We get the person grounded. We create a plan, and we work toward that plan. And then I'm the one who says, I know you want to write. I've had these conversations. I know you want to write your 5th book, but what's that gotten you? Let's stop writing books for now. Let's go back to this money-making activity over here. So we keep it right
Well, and that's exactly what happened in real life is I was, I had this mindset of, I need to do everything. I need to, generate my own content. I need to, manage my own stuff. I need to do my own books. And then, first thing you said is who do you want to work with and why? And what I found was I was working with a lot of people that are wonderful people, and I loved working with them, and I felt, I was helping them be successful, but it wasn't the right niche for where I was. That was it. I was helping them, but I was like almost overkill for what they were looking to do. So then you repositioned, my business mindset as to who I should be serving. And then from there, it got to the point where it's like, okay, now you can't do everything yourself. So now you have to go find people to help you. And so, I grew from maybe 1 or 2 people helping me do a few things to all of a sudden 15 people. And I just hired a project manager who can manage that and help. Actually, now that's the breaking point where now it's going to scale, because this project manager can manage various teams with different clients. And now I don't have to be in the middle of that, playing traffic cop anymore. And, just sitting down and writing, the standard operation procedures and things like that, I'm starting to get more clarity as to what my business is, what makes it different, and what makes it better. And I was talking with my my assistant who's helping me with that. And, I sent her the first couple of things. She goes, "This is amazing." And I said, "I only do amazing." And, that's,
this is true.
yeah, that's what I do. And she just said, "I've never worked with anybody who's had so much clarity about what you do." And I think that's a testament to what you've helped me get to, because now she's seeing somebody who is, already got the vision of where it needs to go. It's not somebody coming to her saying, "Help me, help me, help me." It's me getting her to really come in and kind of help take that to the next level, not her being the coach, so to speak, because that's what she's used to.
Yeah, exactly. That is so powerful what you're saying. Clarity, again, if you look at my website, that's a word that's there quite often, is gaining that clarity, because when you're in the crux of it all and really in the mud and you're you can't have that clarity. And so we work together to figure out, all right, really, who do you want to work with? What do you want to do? And a lot of people are, and I was one of them, Brian, I was afraid of not taking on clients, not getting enough clients. And so I would take anybody in the beginning, not people I knew I couldn't help, but people I didn't like maybe, or, people who had businesses I wasn't interested in getting to know.
I used to call those clients breathing in wallets. They were breathing and they had a wallet. It didn't necessarily mean they had any money in the wallet. They just had a wallet. It's like, well, you can't do this, so you pay with your credit card. But there was nothing there to say, is this a good fit? Is it right? Is it all those things? I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. And so helping people gain the confidence, overcome the fear, and gain the clarity to either fire clients who are costing them more than they're making from them, or who cause them a lot of stress and pain, or
Hmm.
not take on those clients in the first place because you're very, very clear on your niche. And that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's one of the hardest things I think that I've had to come up with is how do you turn clients down? And because back then the mindset was more clients, more money, and but that wasn't the key. It's more success, more clients. I think that's really kind of the biggest mindset shift.
Yes, and for you and for me, we both changed our models so that we're working with people who can afford us and can afford a rate that is going to sustain our business, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so I don't know about you, but I mean, I used to have as many as 24 clients, which for a coach is a very heavy load. Now I tend to stay around 12, 15 is a heavy load for me now. Sometimes I decide, yeah, I'm going to take some time off this summer. I might have 6 or 7, and I'm fine.
Yeah. And I used to have, again, I was always in the mindset of, get 1,000 people to follow you and pay you $100, so you can make $100,000. That was the whole, that was the mindset. Now it's more about, 4 or 5 clients that, I can take this model and basically build around what they need. And so I can find the clients that match the model versus trying to adapt my model to match the clients.
Yes, and when you get results, and again, this is something you and I have in common. More than half my client base are clients who just keep re-upping. I work with my clients on a year-long contract. They sign away right up front because making that commitment is important and keeps people engaged and going.
Hmm.
And I've got a client who's been with me for 14 years.
Wow.
14 years, yeah. But most of my clients stay for at least 3 cycles of a year, at least.
Hmm.
I've been together longer than that, and
Yeah.
many of my clients have been here longer. And then, I bring the new ones on, and they stay for a couple or few years too.
Yeah, and I think having a commitment to consistency is really important in this. Is because there's always more to do. It's not like you get the certificate at the end of it.
Yeah,
You're not getting a certificate of you've achieved your mastery of.
right, right. I love when people say, "A year? What are we going to do for a whole year?"
Right.
I just keep it to myself. I'm just going to be here for 5.
Right.
For 5 years. Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice for people that are, stuck in their business and if you could tell them the one thing to look at that would get them to understand that they're the ones that are holding themselves back, what would that be?
Yeah, you know what I always say, Brian, your body holds a secret. Yeah, your body, your physical being. If you sit for a moment and you close your eyes and you plant your feet on the ground and you just feel your body, you're going to know if you're happy or not. You're going to
Hmm.
know if you're too stressed. You're going to know if you long for more. And if you're sitting and just being in the moment and you listen, you might have tight shoulders, a tight neck. You might have your stomach might be clenchy, your chest might be, tight. You're going to feel sadness or desire. I want so much more. You may feel that excitement in your body. I want more, but I can't get it. You listen to your body. And if you don't have time to spend with the people you love, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. So anyways, if people, want to check you out, I'm just going to tell them to go to marlatabaka.com. This is the top of the website, and you can go learn a lot more about what Marla does. And the bottom line is just, connect with Marla online. I mean, that's my thing is, go find her, read some of the articles, get to know,
Yeah.
and, definitely take a look at your business. Now may not be the right time, but at least you're aware of what's there. So can you believe that we've been doing this for an hour?
No, I could sit here another hour. It's so much fun.
Yeah. No, it was great and a lot of good stuff. So I'm going to look and see if there are any final comments. Nope. Phil is still crying. So I think we're okay there. So that's awesome. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you and your time and coming on. And it was a lot of fun. And I think that, you know, it definitely has made a difference in my business. And I want to kind of bring this mindset thing in because, you know, part of changing your business is mindset all the way around, whether it's working in marketing or not. You've got to look at, you know, is my marketing working? One of the first questions people ask me is, what am I getting for what I'm paying for? And the question is, what do you want? You know, right? You know,
coach too. You answer a question with a question.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And but that's the whole key is, you know, what, if you know what you want, you can get it, but you first got to figure out what you want before you know what you're paying for is working for you. So that's the way it goes. So anyways, Marla, thank you so much. Guys, if you know, like the replay, connect up with both of us, and I'm going to get us going out with our jingle here. So Marla, thanks for your time. It was a blast as usual. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Brian. Thank you.